I don't gotta change the world, I just got to be myself. I don't count dollar signs, spread love and I share the wealth. I've been overthinking all my life, no more wasting all my precious time. I feel alive, I feel alive, feeling like I'm 10 feet tall. I feel alive, I feel alive, feeling like I'm...
Give you some content, and I'd love to get some content, just like interviewing, like learning about, you know, everything that you guys are doing, and you know how it all came about, how the idea started from concept to implementation, and that whole journey.
I was gonna say, you know, it'll be good to wait a little bit, because then I'll actually have I'll be able to lay out the whole plan, you know, because right now it's half plan of what got us to where we're at now, and the other half is it's kind of like a projection, right? It's pro forma. It's well, we hope we can do these 3 things. But once we're able to, that's what I'm trying to say now is you know, whenever we have our brainstorming sessions together, we both come up with a whole bunch of good ideas, and we have, you know, so much energy and inspiration for where we want to take things. But at the same time, it's okay, we have to, you know, write them down so we don't forget them, but we have to focus on, I always say, let's focus on 1 or 2 things every week, you know, and then that's kind of what we've done, you know. So even it's been on the website side of things, or creating socials, or creating a few internal processes that have helped with some efficiencies from a communication standpoint, hey, Nick, you handle this, Corey, you handle this, I'll handle this. You know, just kind of figuring, because you know how it is when you first start a business, you're basically wearing 20 hats, right? And then as you grow, you're okay, you wear this hat for a little bit, you wear this hat, you know. And I think that's where we're at now, which is a credit to how much work they've already put in to get the company to where it's at right now, right? Where they've proven the concept, they've done a bunch of work, you know. I want to say they have, I could be misquoting this, but I want to say they already have maybe over 100 to 150 posts on the Instagram of work they've done over the last 8 years, right? So I mean, it's proven concept. They just, you know, they just weren't so quick to start their business doing all the things that a business has. And they're let's just get our licenses, get some work in, prove the concept, get some good testimonials. And then from there, you know, because you know how it is. Even, I mean, at least for me, I feel there's a few things that I'm decent at. Then there's a few things that I know if I spend the time good on the wormhole, then I'll be good at it at some point. But then other things I'm listen, that, you know, my time would be better used at the things I'm good at, and you know, outsource those things.
There's a really popular book that speaks about that called Who Not How. Talks all about how instead of you trying to get really, really good at admin work, and get really good at bookkeeping, and get really good at sales, and get really good at marketing, and get really good at accounting, you know, you find people who are already have those skill sets that are specialized in those niche areas, and implement them in your business, and you focus on continuing to grow the business, that one area or 2 areas that you're really proficient in. And I mean, I've tried to do that in my business too, and it's been, you know, it's harder when you're going from the very beginning stage, when you're wearing every hat, to then be able to take off one of those hats and find someone, train them, get them you know, trained up and ready to perform in that role. But yeah, it's a really, really important step from going to level 0 to level 1 to level 2 to level 3. Is that process.
And it's, you know, it's a little bit of risk, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're letting go of some of the control, right? At that point, you've learned how to get that task done correctly, or how you want it to get done. And now you have to kind of give up some of that control and have some faith in the person that you brought on to, you know, kind of backfill those responsibilities.
And then if they leave, or if they have to get fired, or they quit, or whatever, then you have to scramble. It's a lot of time. It's money, it's resources, it's energy, it's effort to find another person, get them trained, onboarded, and put in that position again. I hate, you know, every time that we've had turnover in our company, and you just, you know, I think to myself, because the first couple of times I didn't do a good job of making recordings, really processing out the training process. And so I spent an immense amount of time. I mean, let's put this. I want to put this in the. This is good stuff. I want to put this in the podcast.
Oh, we're already going.
Oh, are we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So the first couple of times when I hired people, I just, you know, was training them myself. So it was very time intensive, and I did not do a good job documenting that process. And so when they eventually left, for one reason or another, and then I was oh my God, I got to start this whole process all over again. This is an immense amount of my time that I have to put into this as well, to be able to get someone trained up and be proficient to be successful in this role. And so what I finally learned after hiring a couple people and then them not working out is to document that process really, really well. So now for multiple different areas, multiple different roles in our companies, we have a whole video library and Google Docs that go and say step by step someone needs to do to be successful in this role. So now I can onboard and train someone in a fraction of my time and still have them have a quality training process, which is really important as well, so that they feel like they're stepping into a legitimate business, one that's already got systems and processes in place. It's not some fly-by-night company. It's got metrics in place. They have a clear understanding of exactly what they need to do to be successful in the role. And then it allows us as the business operators to have a much better time managing someone, to know, hey, are they meeting the key metrics? If they are, then we know that they're on the right track, and we have other key metrics for them to be able to grow and learn within the company. And then if they're not, we can hold them accountable, which is equally as important, so that when you bring someone on, they can be held accountable. And if they're not performing, you as the business owner need to be able to make decisive decisions, whether, hey, is this person, meeting the correct metrics? If not, what do we need to get them to meet them? And then if they continue to not meet them, we need to find someone who can be in that role that will meet those.
Absolutely.
And I made that mistake as well, like holding on to employees for too long because I had spent so much time training them.
Yeah.
And I was just not wanting to go through that whole time of like retraining someone else. And so I ended up holding on to someone in my company who shouldn't have been there, wasn't the best person for the role. And the company itself suffered as we kind of limped along for, a few months after I knew I should have let them go in the first place.
Right. That's a really good point. I mean, it's all about just taking that time at the onset to create those processes, because that's what the big corporate companies do too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially now in this new, not really new world, but with Teams and Zoom applications and all that, they just they'll do the training one time, they'll record it and say, hey, go watch the training videos, right? And it's not, I think it makes a lot of sense, like you said, because now if you don't do that, you're thinking, man, I put so much time into, these 3 individuals, maybe 2 of them aren't performing like you said. But now in the back of your head, you're really just dreading having to retrain, the person that you would bring in to backfill them, just because you don't have those, structured processes in place.
It's so time intensive. If you think of like how large companies, they'll onboard like 20 to 30 sales reps at a time. If you go to, a lot of these larger companies, and how can they onboard, train, and manage, 30 new hires all at once? And it's because they have systems, processes, KPIs in place, and it's like a well-documented system to be able to put someone in that role to be successful. It's kind of like the same way, like think of, how does the military can take any average citizen and make them into a well-trained
It's a good point.
personnel within a very, small amount of time. And it's because they have a structured training environment, which has been key for, being able to get people ramped up and learn responsibilities and be successful. People thrive in those types of structured environments.
No, that's a good point. So let's talk a little bit about your business, right? So just obviously I know a little bit about it, but just for the people out there that aren't familiar with what you're doing today, just kind of give us a high level summary of what you're doing to I guess pay the bills, so to speak.
Yeah. So I started a company. It's a real estate investment company, mainly focused on residential real estate. We fix and flip, wholesale, and buy and hold rental properties as well. And so that's pretty much the only way that we make money is, we're doing off market, direct to seller marketing, and then buying properties, and, we'll either wholesale them, we'll fix them up and sell them, or what I have come to love the most so far is holding them into, building a
rental portfolio.
Yeah, rental portfolio. So, I mean, and it's small. I definitely don't want to over exaggerate like the scale of anything.
Sure. Gotta start somewhere though, and
exactly.
By getting into fix and flips, rentals, buy and holds, wholesaling, whatever the case may be, you're basically just giving yourself more opportunities for real estate business as opposed to just going down one path, right?
Yeah, and they work in tandem. Like the longer that I've been doing this, the more I realize that how these other more successful real estate investors, more experienced, They use long-term rentals to offset tax liabilities from active income that they get from their wholesale and fix and flip companies. And so they really kind of work in tandem. Like right now we've had a good year so far.
Okay.
And so we have a considerable amount of income that we've made from our wholesale and fix and flip side. And that's taxed at the highest rate.
Sure.
And so I'm about to close on a property this coming week that we're going to hold into our rental portfolio, and it's going to cash flow and it's going to, have good appreciation and everything. But one of the biggest benefits of this particular rental portfolio or a rental property is it's going to offset a lot of the gains that we've made, and from a depreciation standpoint, so we can mitigate our taxes that we're going to have to pay from the wholesale and the fix and flip side. So it's just really interesting. I always talk about how real estate, there's so many ways that the tax code has been written to benefit real estate investors.
Yep.
And I mean,
that's why everyone's always preaching get into real estate or get a small business, and maybe do both, right? Get a small business that is involved in real estate because of the tax benefits and advantages. I feel like at the end of the day, that's what you're really striving for as an entrepreneur. Obviously you're building purpose with your path and what your talents are, but at the end of the day, you're trying to limit that tax liability that you can't do if you're working for somebody else or a corporation.
No, 100%. And so it's great that we're able to do both, and we're really have met so many people, so many sellers that are in difficult situations in their life, and we're able to be a huge help for them when they're wanting to sell their property and have all the extra things that a company like us can offer: speed, convenience, help them with logistics, literally go to their house and help them move if they're maybe they're a hoarder and they want to move but they don't have the funds to do it. We've done all kinds of crazy things to help people outside of just your standard we'll buy the property. To kind of go above and beyond and provide value, find ways to help people. And that's how you are able to provide value to a market and extract out profit. At least in real estate, the only way that I know is finding more and innovative ways to help people. Help people and solve problems, and you will make money. In real estate, you want to make more money, help more people, solve larger problems.
Right. That's a good point too, because I think even when people first begin to get interested in real estate or even delve into it, whether they're getting their real estate license, whether they're starting off on their first fix and flip, wholesale, whatever the case is, and I think it's with most things, when you try to learn something, you look at things very binary, very black and white, right? Because you're trying to understand if this happens and this happens, right? Obviously, real estate is a little bit more fluid, right? It's not as black and white. There's not really one way to attack it.
Just to jump off that, it was really interesting for me early on, and this is really common for a lot of real estate investors. I could not wrap my mind around why a person would sell their property for a discount, for anything less than what the full market, may be able to bear.
Yeah.
And it was only through doing more deals and talking to more sellers who had significant problems going on in their lives that I genuinely understood what so many other experienced real estate investors told me, was that oftentimes the people that we're helping, the first and second priority is not about the money. Oftentimes the money is one of the least important things to these people. Speed, convenience, helping them figure out problems, helping them navigate like foreclosures with banks, or family matters with, if they have probate properties, or if they have tenants that are in the property and they destroyed the place or they're not getting out, and helping them overcome all of these different problems. Like, these are the things that keep people up at night, that the types of people that we're helping. And so a lot of the times, when we're able to buy a property from someone and be a benefit to them, one of the last things that we're talking about is the price. The things that we're spending all our time in is the things that are causing them stress, causing them grief, how they can, sell this property, or what they need to do to move on with their life in the best way possible. And that's why I just keep coming back to the more ways that we can find ways to help people is the way that we're having success in real estate.
So that's why your company is called Ethical Solutions, because you guys are essentially just solving problems, finding solutions to real estate problems in each transaction that you're a part of.
Yeah, very much. And just when I started getting into real estate, obviously I had a perception of, we've all know that there are plenty of scammy people, plenty of bad people out there in any industry, including real estate for sure. There's no shortage of that. And I always hated that about the small parts that I knew about the industry. And so for me, it was really important. I really wanted to be intentional about how I wanted to operate when getting into real estate, when getting into the company that I was starting, my first company that I started in the first industry that I started a company in. And so for better or worse, I was like, I'd rather lose opportunities. I'd rather make less money. And I want that to be known of me.
Sure.
And so that's why I named the company Ethical Home Solutions. And I've always tried to carry myself in a manner that reflected that.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So when did the company officially start? Like what year, what month?
Yeah, it was July of 2021.
Okay.
So, yeah.
A little over 2 year mark.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Going over 2 years.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Given, I forget the exact statistics, but the vast majority of new businesses, they don't make it 1 year, even less survive 2 years, even less survive 5 years.
Yep.
And so every year that we are still in business, and not only in business, but growing, it's really a great point of pride on my side.
Absolutely.
That we're able to still continue to, find success and help more people and grow the business and provide jobs for people within the company. And so, yeah, it's been really exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And you're doing something you love and you're passionate about, and, you're just growing your toolbox in, and you're doing the two hardest things, right? So they always, I don't know at what year mark, but they always say 90% of all small businesses fail, right?
Yeah.
But then they also say, which for you, it's correlated, that 80% of businesses or people in real estate today won't be in 3 years.
Yeah.
Because real estate weeds people out pretty quick, right? If you're not making transactions, you're not building your network, you're just not going to be doing deals, and you're not going to obviously be bringing in revenues. And with the amount of money that inherently is required on the marketing side of things, advertising, just rudimentary admin that has to happen for you to run your business, it just isn't feasible if you're not making deals.
Yeah. And it's very easy to make poor decisions in real estate. And I've made many of them, and I've been lucky enough to survive the bad decisions and do really well with the good decisions. And, we never kind of bet the farm on one horse.
Sure.
I've never taken, it's all about taking risk and mitigating the right amount of risk. I've never put all of my money onto a single property where, like, hey, if this deal were to go bad, then I'm totally screwed. But even still, yeah, it's about managing risk, and it's so easy for a lot of people to lose a large amount of money, just not even doing what they think is best at the time, and then the market changes, or they just ran their numbers wrong, or they had a key oversight, and people can get burned and lose large amounts of money in real estate very quickly.
Same thing with anything else, right? I mean, that's why you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket or bet the farm. We see it in stock trading too, right? I mean, it's kind of funny too, because everything kind of goes in cycles, especially from like what's popular. And I would say that real estate, it's always been a popular mode of making money, right? They say real estate makes the most millionaires, but just from like a social media standpoint, I feel like since COVID 2020, getting into real estate really took off right after the end of the day trading boom that happened at the onset of COVID. Everyone was a stock trader, everyone's trading AMC or whatever the case is, right? And making money.
Run. Yeah.
But now, then shortly after that, they were taking their stock money and their stimulus checks to get into real estate, which I think was positive. And now we're kind of seeing that taper off a little bit, as most trends do for a lot of people. But obviously, there's still investors that that's where they cut their teeth. But the market is in a unique spot right now with where interest rates are. How has that impacted your business?
Well, it's actually been a positive impact for what we're doing. And it gets back to when I was saying, hey, finding new and innovative ways to help people, along that comes with that is like utilizing different creative finance strategies that can acquire or disposition real estate without having to utilize institutional loans. So that we do plenty of deals that we don't have to go and get a loan from a bank for. And so the interest rates really aren't a factor in us and being able to still buy a property, help a seller out. It is been beneficial in the sense that, like, so people know that the market is changing, it's shifting downward. And before, like when I first got into real estate, like I literally, and I don't recommend that people do this, I quit my job and then started a real estate company, and without really any momentum. I had done one fix and flip before I quit my job and went all in. Not smart. I don't recommend that. I had my savings saved up to be able to carry me over, but just from a mental and emotional standpoint,
we'll put more stress on you to perfect it sooner.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and it takes time. So when I first started, the market was just hot as can be, and sellers, it was really tough for me to get a deal because people were paying crazy amounts of money for property, overpaying, paying with all cash. There was an immense amount of like private equity capital in the market, and you can't compete with hedge funds that are throwing around. They're managing billions of dollars, paying all cash, over asking price. And so trying to work out a deal with a seller who is like, yeah, I want to sell, but my house needs, $80,000 worth of work. I want to sell it for $50,000 more than the fully fixed up value of the property. And if you don't pay it, somebody else will. Some hedge fund will. And they weren't totally wrong.
Yeah.
And so that was my introduction into the market, was like, I don't understand how I'll ever be able to get a deal or do anything in real estate, because it was such a difficult market, in my opinion. Now that it's shifted and sellers are seeing the reality more that, hey, prices are not going up forever. People are not paying, $30,000 in cash over asking as is. That's really stopped. It has allowed us to be able to have more realistic conversations with sellers, and therefore be able to do more deals. And so the market shift, I just say all that to say, like, the market shifting downward has actually been a big benefit to us, and we're doing more deals than we ever did back when things were going crazy.
So it sounds like it's been a benefit because you guys are doing deals somewhat or essentially non-traditionally, right? Because traditionally you just go to the bank, you get a mortgage loan, you do the deal, right? And there might be some of that with what you guys do, but it sounds like a lot of your deals are just not.
Yeah, no, the majority of our deals are either they're cash, and so we're dealing with our own cash, or we're wholesaling cash deals, or we're structuring seller finance deals or subject to deals, which we can get into. Those are different creative finance strategies. And we also use private money. So instead of using, if I want to buy a house, instead of having to go to the bank every time, I have a network of private money lenders who we can go and lend at, better rates, easier terms. And it's just a lot more enjoyable, easier process dealing with private money lenders than dealing with institutional lenders.
Absolutely. So let's dive into it real quick from like a summary version, just to kind of educate people out there. Let's jump into sub 2, right? So give me your minute summary on sub 2. Not only what it means, how you do the sub 2 deal, and once you got that deal, what can you do with it?
Yeah, so sub 2 is it's called buying a property subject to the existing mortgage, and it's really fairly simple. All it means is that there's two different things. You have the title or the deed of a property, which represents the ownership, and then you have a mortgage, which is what you're paying every month to a lender. And so these are two separate things. So all we do when we buy a property subject to the existing mortgage is we tell the seller that you're going to transfer the title out of your name into our name, and the mortgage is going to stay in their name. And every month, instead of the previous owner, paying the mortgage company, we are going to take the money from our bank account and give it directly to the mortgage company, and we're going to just pay that mortgage every month on their behalf. And we become the owner of the property. Okay,
so you're basically saying, listen, we're going to take over your mortgage. For whatever reason, you can't pay it, or you need to move out of this property. Maybe you bought the property too recently to where even if you sold it a year later, you bought it last year, you want to sell it tomorrow, you're not going to walk away with any money after you pay closing costs, commissions, taxes, whatever the case may be. So that part makes sense. Do you run into any trouble? Because again, I'm assuming most times when you find these opportunities, the seller or the owner of that property may not know what subject to means. So I'm sure you have to, kind of bridge that gap of, explaining that to them. And then it probably sounds too good to be true at first once they understand what you're saying, right? But is there any kind of like legal document that you guys use as well to give the seller peace of mind that you guys are actually in fact going to make those payments?
Yeah. So, well, first off, a lot of people are hesitant to even want to know, hey, is this real or is this legal? I want to make sure it's legal. It's 100% legal. And so every time that we talk to a seller about subject to, and it's just another option to be able to provide a possible solution. For the majority of sellers that we come across, it's not a good fit. And then for a specific few, for their situation, it can be a wonderful fit.
Yeah.
Same thing with seller finance, same thing with a cash offer,
Sure.
Same thing with a financed offer.
It's not a one shoe fits all type thing.
Exactly.
So just so we can explain to everyone, so for it to not be a good fit for subject to specifically, would that just mean that that owner maybe just has a lot of equity in that property to where it just doesn't make sense for them?
So oftentimes, yeah, subject to is likely not going to be a good fit for someone who has a lot of equity and they want to, realize that equity right away. Sure. They want that money like in their pocket right away. Mm-hmm. So unless you do some type of like hybrid deal, oftentimes they'd rather not go with a subject to. So for them, oftentimes it can't be. Say that some people just, it makes them feel better to sleep at night having that mortgage paid off.
Yeah.
Which I understand. There's a lot of reasons why they want that, and we're really good at overcoming objections or just sharing the reasons why, hey, they may have a previous concern. Maybe they think it prevents them from acquiring another mortgage later in the future. It doesn't.
Right.
Really common objection, and it's really
important. I was just gonna say a lot of people probably think that, but from just my knowledge base on that process of it, the mortgage companies typically don't care how much debt that you have from a lump sum amount. You can have $3 million in debt, right? But if your monthly obligation on that debt is $1,000, that's what they care about.
Yeah.
What is your monthly obligation, right? Because that's what they use when they say your debt to income ratio. It's on a monthly basis, right? Mm-hmm. And so if they can go through your 90 days of bank statements and say, hey, Ethical Solutions has been paying this mortgage, no, not Joe Smith, then we're not going to, count this against Joe Smith's debt to income.
Exactly. So they can remove a portion or all of that debt as long as you can prove that, hey, this other company.
It's like rental income almost, right?
Exactly.
Like how they look at it. So maybe they only remove 70% of it, but that's still a large chunk, and that likely won't impede you from getting another mortgage.
And the more time goes by, I think it's around like 6 months. Up to 6 months, you can, as long as you can prove that somebody else is paying the mortgage, many lenders will remove up to 70%. And then after, another period of time, 8 to 10 or 12 months.
Nice.
I think 12 months is like the final cutoff where you can go to a lender and say, hey, I want all 100% of this debt removed from my debt to income ratio when you're looking at me as a borrower.
Right.
And I can prove that somebody else is making the payments. They purchased the property subject to the existing mortgage. So we hire third-party servicing companies that do that, and they show that and prove that. So every month they automatically take the funds from our account. They take those funds and pay off the mortgage. They send a notification, a confirmation email to us. They send a confirmation email to the seller. And so every month there's verified proof that this is happening. And then that verified proof can be given to a lender to show, hey, this is my proof that this should be removed from my debt to income ratio.
Very good.
A very common objection. And it's really important that we're able to know the right way to answer that and share all the correct information to minimize that concern from sellers.
Right.
So that's really important. The way that I look at subject to versus seller finance, or really any seller that we're talking about when we're doing like direct to seller off market deals, is there's two main types of motivation for why someone would want to sell their property. They're either moving towards pleasure or they're moving away from pain. And I can give you an example of this. So like, say I want to move closer to my kids. I would really like to move closer to my grandkids and spend some time with them. And so I want to move across the country. That's moving towards pleasure.
Yeah.
You have a desire for something that you would like to have happen, but if it doesn't, it's not going to have a massive negative impact.
Sure.
So that's an example of moving towards pleasure. Moving away from pain is like, hey, the bank is about to foreclose and take my property. The cops are going to come, show up, and kick me and my family out. Like, that is a serious motivating factor, and that's moving away from pain. Maybe there's a probate, and probate just means that someone in your family passed away and you inherited the property. And I talk to people all the time that have this, and they're like, so now I'm paying property taxes, I'm paying insurance, I'm paying all the costs to keep a property up. It, has people breaking into it. I don't live in the property. It's vacant now, and I'm constantly dealing with, people breaking in. and it's costing me an immense amount of money.
Mhm.
I don't have the money to fix it up. I don't have the time. I don't have the desire. I'm not close to it. I just want to like get done with this thing. That can be, moving away from pain. Like,
Sure.
hey, and I've talked to plenty of people
Yeah.
that are like, I literally don't have the money to keep up my house, and now I'm keeping up this other house. So that can be, moving away from pain. Seller finance is oftentimes when we're dealing with someone who has a motivation that they want to move towards pleasure. They want to maximize their gain. Subject to, oftentimes, most often, is someone who's moving away from pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to sell and they have no equity or they have negative equity. You
Right.
talked about an example of someone who wants to sell their house and maybe they're going to walk away with nothing.
Yep.
Shoot, we did a deal with a person earlier this year that tried to list their house on the market. They had negative, they bought the house, cleared out everything. I mean, took it down to the studs
Mm-hmm.
and ran out of money for a renovation that they were doing. And then they hired a real estate agent and listed it on the market to just sell it as is.
Mm-hmm.
And the highest cash offers that they were getting were $50,000 to $60,000 less than the mortgage balance. Literally, if this guy wanted to sell, and that's not even before he has to pay for the realtor.
I was gonna say, but even that is I would argue it's probably like a rare circumstance, right? Because a lot of times, again, even if you purchase a property above market value, you have to come up with that difference with cash.
Yeah.
You're not getting the mortgage for a property above market value in theory, ever,
Yeah.
right?
And there's so much money that gets sucked out of a real estate transaction between title fees and realtor fees and loan origination fees that say if you bought a house a year ago for $300,000 and now you want to sell it for $300,000, you are not walking away flush.
Yeah.
It's costing you money.
And the seller incurs more closing costs than the buyer does.
Exactly. So on this example, this deal that we did in Bradenton earlier this year, I mean, this guy he literally couldn't afford to sell the property because he didn't have $60,000 in cash to come up with the difference.
Right.
But he also didn't have the money every month. It was costing him $2,700 between principal, interest, taxes.
Sure.
All
36 grand a year just to keep the house.
Yeah, just to keep the house afloat. Yeah. And so he couldn't afford to sell it. He couldn't afford to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking about this when I'm saying, hey, we're looking for people that have problems that we can go and provide a solution. So we structured to purchase the property subject to the existing mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're saying buying a property subject to, that's simply on the acquisition side. That's
Right.
how you can acquire a
Right.
property. On the disposition side, you can wholesale that property. You can fix and flip it. You can hold on to it as a rental. You can do
So you still have all your options.
Yeah.
Because now all you've done is say, okay, now I have the right to this property.
And now I have the ownership of this property.
Yeah.
And then I can do with this property whatever the highest and best use of the property is.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ended up wholesaling that property because it needed an extensive renovation beyond what I was wanting to take on.
Sure.
It really needed, and we found a developer who that's what they do. They buy dilapidated houses and knock them down and start over, or they just buy vacant land and build brand new houses. He doesn't want to do what we do, which is go and renovate an existing house.
Right.
So it was a perfect deal for him. And we were able to structure a wholesale fee. We structured the deal, bought the property subject to, and wholesaled it to a developer who acquired the property at a great price.
Mm-hmm.
The seller was finally able to sell the property, no longer has any payments,
Probably walked away with a few bucks in his pocket, right?
Yeah.
In theory.
Yeah, small amount of money.
Yeah.
I mean, so
it's not really important what the amount is. It's just the fact that he was able to walk away with something when
before, I mean,
negative.
even if he walked away with nothing,
it would have been a win. In theory, if he needed to get out of that property,
he would have walked away with $50,000 more than if he had sold it for his highest offer.
Right.
Because he would have had to write a check for 50 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So even walking away with nothing is like walking away with an extra 50 grand.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a great deal for the seller. He was over the moon about it. It was a great deal for the person that we wholesaled it to because they acquired the property for a very small amount of money. And then it ended up being a great deal for them. And we made a healthy assignment fee out of it. So again, just structuring, deals, finding ways to help people. And it's just another example of how we are providing value to a market. And that's how we're finding ways to make profit is through that exact example, like finding different ways to provide value.
Right. Absolutely. So I guess from like a from a market standpoint, is there certain markets that that you're only working in? Are you only working in like the Tampa Bay through, Sarasota markets?
Mm-hmm.
Are you working outside of that? Are you just working statewide? Does it really depend on the opportunity or?
So for me personally, what we target is I'm born and raised in Tampa Bay, in the Tampa area. I know it really well. And so we focus on this greater Tampa Bay area for all of our marketing, all of our outreach when we're reaching out to find, sellers that we can help. It's all within about an hour radius of Tampa Bay.
Okay. So, and let's talk about that. What are you doing on the marketing front right now?
So we're doing cold calling and sending text messages.
Okay.
And then there's also referrals. We have a website that people can go to, if you Google it, and you can put in your information. And so that's the main 4 areas that we are using marketing channels to find deals and buy properties.
Okay, very good. And so I guess let's talk about some more recent deals. I know we talked about a couple, but let's talk about some recent deals. And we're getting to the fourth quarter now. Mm-hmm. Do you expect to have, in real estate, typically the fourth quarter is where a lot of people make their money. Are you expecting to have a busier fourth quarter than, the first 3 quarters of this year? Is it expected to be kind of the same? I guess, I'm talking traditionally here. So I know what you guys do is a mix of traditional and non-traditional. So what's kind of your expectations to close out the year, and what's been your favorite deal so far this year?
So, okay, those are 2 really good questions. First off, I think one of the biggest things that we're doing is, we are helping people that are going through all kinds of different problems, but one of the constant ones that has been a good source for us is foreclosures. And foreclosures are rising, especially utilizing things like Subject 2. We're able to help homeowners who are going through foreclosures, and instead of them having a foreclosure on their record, we catch up the arrears, we pay all the money that's owed to the bank, and then buy the property subject to the existing mortgage. As foreclosures increase, we're seeing that we're finding more and more deals that are coming across that are people raising their hands saying, hey, I'm interested in selling because I'm going through foreclosure.
Sure.
So,
what does that process happen? Let's talk about that for a little bit. So let's say you come across somebody and maybe they're already a few weeks late on their last mortgage payment, right? And then they kind of see, okay, things aren't looking good. I don't have any income coming in right now. I'm already a couple weeks late on my mortgage payment. They're trying to get ahead of it, right? They come across you, they reach out to you. What can you do? How much time do you have before the bank steps in and it's tough for you to make that a deal?
So it depends on where they're at in the process. If I talk to someone and they're like, hey, the bank is going to repossess the house tomorrow, there's still some things that we may be able to do, but it becomes much, much harder.
Sure.
If usually a foreclosure process takes a fair amount of time. It takes, many months, and it's definitely not always the same. It can depend on each individual bank, on each individual borrower. How many foreclosures is that particular bank dealing with at one time? So it's not a one size fits all, but oftentimes it's a multi-month process. And so depending on what the seller is looking to accomplish, like we never go into a conversation saying, hey, like trying to force a particular solution. And you can't do that. You have to figure out, what does the seller want to do? Do they want to stay in the property? We know a number of ways that can help them just stay in the property. And we don't buy it, we don't make anything, but we can recommend a number of different things that they can do to either restructure their debt or try to get a loan from a family member, or a number of different things that can help them if their goal is to stay in the property. Sometimes they can accomplish some of those things. Oftentimes they can't.
Sure.
Even if they would like to stay, they can't restructure it. They can't do a loan modification. They maybe have already filed bankruptcy, so they can't file bankruptcy. They can't get a loan from a family member. Like, they really don't have any other option to allow them to stay in the home.
Right.
So, okay, you don't want to stay in the home. Would you rather just sell your house for cash? Oftentimes, that's the quickest, easiest, simplest thing to do. And if they would like to do that, and the numbers make sense for us, then we can do that. And it's only becomes an issue. So, say they owe $50,000 in their mortgage, and the as-is value of the property is $150,000. Well, there's plenty of money there for them to be able to receive a cash offer, pay off the mortgage, pay off all the arrears, and they just walk away with a chunk of money in their pocket and it's clean.
Right.
Now, say they owe $300,000 to the bank and the as is value of the house, because it's in a bad condition, is only worth $100,000. Well, then a cash offer is not going to be able to work for them. So even if they would, they're okay with selling the property, they want to sell, but a cash offer is not going to be able to work. Then, depending on the deal, we may be able to buy it subject to the existing mortgage.
Gotcha.
And so what that would entail is there's what's called arrears, which is like all the missed payments. So every month they missed $1,000 a month payment to the bank. They're 12 months behind. They owe $12,000. They don't have $12,000. We can come to the bank and give them that $12,000 to bring the mortgage current. Mm-hmm. Give the seller whatever amount that we've agreed upon they walk away with. Say they want to walk away with $20,000.
Yeah.
As long as, you got to take into account all the numbers.
Yeah.
How much is your repairs going to be? How much are your closing costs? What's going to be what they call the ARV, the after repair value of the property? And if it makes sense, you got to do your homework. You got to do your due diligence.
Right.
If it makes sense, then you're able to give the homeowner the maximum amount of money that makes sense for you to be able to do and still not lose money on the deal.
Gotcha. So going back a little bit, what would you have said is your favorite deal of 2023 so far? Maybe it was a tough deal that just because you're able to get it across the finish line, they have a lot of pride there. That might be your favorite deal. Mm-hmm. Maybe the company made the most money financially. Maybe you're able to help somebody out tremendously. I mean, maybe it's a little bit of everything there, but what's for 2023 might be a tough one, but what's been your favorite deal so far?
So I'm kind of torn. There's one that made the most money and there's one that helped the seller.
We could talk about both. So.
Yeah. So the one that I really just like puts the biggest smile on my face and I love, and I just think about this all the time, especially when like we're going through tough times, deals are falling apart or people, it's just like the business is tough. I always think about this guy, a guy named Alan. He owned a property that was a probate property. His aunt passed away. Alan lives in Jacksonville. The property's in Sarasota. And I get in touch with him. He wants to sell. And the problem is that he wants to sell like right away. Alan himself, unfortunately, had severe liver disease. And he was only expected to live from his doctors for like the next, 3 to 4 months. I mean, he had been telling me this from the moment that I talked to him. He was already in the advanced stages of liver disease. He was really worried that he was not going to be able to sell this property in time in order to, have the money. None of it was really going to go to him. It was going to go to his family.
Yeah.
But he was trying to accomplish this sale like in time before he passed away. And, it was just such a stressful time in his life. And there was a number of issues that happened with, with title and everything. And we had to clear a bunch of hurdles. So I won't bore you with the details, but it took an immense amount of work on our part to like just come up with different solutions to overcome issues with the property, issues with the title, issues with the probate attorney, issues with going through probate and, Sarasota County court system. And so long story short, we did a lot of work to be able to finally get this thing where it was clear and ready to close. And, when it finally closed, I mean, he called me and he was crying. I mean, he's, in his mid 60s and this man, I could just hear it on the phone. He was just so unbelievably thankful and so grateful that we were able to help him out. And he really was worried that it wasn't going to be able to be done in time. And I just, think about that often. I'm like, man, because, you talk to people and a lot of times you get cursed out by other sellers or you get, there's just all kinds of hardships that come in this business. And I always just try to tell myself and tell my team like, hey, we are genuinely helping people. Let's focus on the people that need and want our help. And that's what gets me through it,
Yeah. That's the purpose that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was probably my favorite. We did a deal where we probably made the most money on a house in Lakeland where we bought it $0 down with like a 15-year seller finance term.
Okay.
No balloon, 2% interest rate.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it ended up being a really good deal. And so that was probably like the best deal I structured. We made the most money out of it.
Is that one that you put into your rental portfolio or did you?
No. So funny enough, what I ended up doing was actually it's called what I call a wholesale. So a wholesale is when you sell a contract to another investor,
right?
And they buy it, another buyer. We actually bought this property, took ownership of it. didn't require any money out of pocket. It was $0 down, and then we just listed it on the market on the MLS, and we're able to get and sell it outright. And so we had no money invested into the deal,
right,
other than the closing costs. So
sure.
we literally had like $2,000 invested into becoming the owner of this property, and then turned around and sold it for a really healthy amount.
Nice.
And so it was like the ROI on that deal was just ridiculous. You know?
I could tell by their smile.
So
like, we're staying in business today.
It was good. And then able to, I love when you have like a big windfall profit like that, able to turn around to the team and give everyone bonuses. And,
it's a good feeling and builds confidence, in the culture of the business and the direction it's going. And obviously it's makes you feel good as well as a leader of it. Being
able to turn around and like, you're already, your company is providing the living. We have 5 full-time employees. I mean, it's how they feed their families.
Yeah.
It's how they make a living. And it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's a lot of 5 being in business for a couple of years now, a little over 2 years. I mean, that's impressive. That's tough.
Yeah. Now, I mean, they're virtual employees.
That's all right. But you're still responsible for
their full-time, 40 to 50 hours a week. It's their only job. It is literally how they feed themselves and their families. So it has a large responsibility. And when you're able to, have wins in the company and then share that with, it's a small company, small team, and share that with everyone.
Yeah.
It's definitely the most rewarding part of it. So like, the money, I don't know. It's weird. The more deals we do, we're making money. The money is kind of like ethereal in a sense. Like I see numbers on a screen, but it doesn't have as large of an impact. Like I don't need, I don't go out and buy a bunch of
it's not the driving force behind why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But it is a metric for deciding if a deal makes sense.
Oh, right? 1,000%. It's got to make sense. I mean, because you can't give bonuses to people. You can't pay salaries. You can't buy properties from sellers in need if the numbers don't make sense.
Right.
So like those little numbers on the screen have got to make sense.
Yeah. It's an important detail, but again, it's not the cornerstone of why you do what you do.
It's critical. It's not the reason why.
Yeah.
It's critical to making it happen, but it's not the reason why.
Yeah.
And so, being able to hand like an employee a check for an amount of money larger than they've ever had at any other job in their life.
Yep.
Is really freaking cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to change gears real quick, just because I think it's important. Obviously people close to you, your good friends, they get to see, witness, and hear about the good things, some of the struggles that you've been able to get past, right? Whenever we talk to business owners, a lot of times we talk about, not only in your business, are you solving solutions ethically? But just in that business, you're always solving for the next problem, right? So even for you, like if, what's the next problem, or I guess what's your current problem right now that you're trying to find a solution to in regards to maybe expanding the company, getting more deals, growth, maybe building culture, maybe there's more processes or efficiencies that you'd like to build. So what would you say currently right now is your current problem that you're trying to find a solution for to take you to that next step that you want to take the business to?
Recruiting quality people.
Okay.
Finding, recruiting quality people.
Retaining them too, I assume.
Retaining them depends, I think, more so on the work that we've already done in the company. Do we have strong systems and processes in place? Do we have expectations in place? Have we created a culture that people would want to work in? Do we have, like I said, the right expectations so people know exactly what they need to do to be successful? All of that, I think, is really, really important in retaining people.
Okay.
And we've done a good job, and I've spent, a considerable amount of time in building those things. So they could always be better, like everything else, and want to continue to grow them. But I feel a lot more confident in once we find someone to bring them into our team, we have the structure to be able to have them be successful. I think finding like people as we continue to grow has been one of the more challenging things that we're trying to do. And then like just always looking for different ways to expand out. When you're running a wholesale operation, marketing is hands down. Marketing and labor is your biggest expense. Okay. And so trying new marketing channels, trying to get those set up, trying to implement all the right KPIs so that we can kind of hit the ground running and make sure that we're tracking stuff in the right way. Those are also things that like I'm, working on and struggling with, or those are like challenges. So I'd say those two things, but probably first and foremost is finding, recruiting quality people.
Gotcha. Okay. That sounds like, I mean, I feel like I've heard that kind of across the board, whether it's small business through corporate. I think that's just where we're at right now with things. But, it sounds like you've been able to find, a good team so far. And, I think as those team members, again, like you talked about, you're able to give them bonuses. They're able to really help you grow as well. I think that helps finding good talent because good talent's attracted to working with other good talent, right? And so I think that's important. But also let's talk about not necessarily a loss that you've had. And I know we've talked about it before, but I think it's a pretty good story of maybe something, a deal that was very tough and it didn't go the way you wanted to. But, looking back in hindsight, there was a lot of lessons to be learned. And I'm thinking specifically of the deal.
I know exactly what
yeah. So let's you can summarize where you want to, but I think it's a good story start to finish because, you're not really sure what's going to happen next. So let's just dive into that story. And just again, a lot of times we don't post our challenges, our losses. And although, you're able to find a solution at the end of the day, it was a tough, stressful process. It sounded like to me. I mean, I couldn't imagine being in those shoes, especially so early on in your journey. So let's paint the picture. How long were you doing real estate when this situation happened? What was the situation and what you take from it?
Okay. So it's a great question. This is like the story that I tell, maybe more than anything else. Should just, give a real quick overview. I was fortunate enough to have a mentor in my life, someone that I knew who, guy's name's Alex Ottowell. Every chance I get to show thanks and show gratitude to that person, always like to take that opportunity because you're so impactful in my life. He was a really successful real estate investor in the Tampa Bay area, flipped like thousands of houses, very successful guy. He helped me get into real estate. He basically handed me my first deal on a silver platter, called me one morning and said, "Hey, I'm going to look at a property. I think you should buy it." He was going to buy it. And instead of him buying it and making a bunch of money on it, he basically gifted it to me on a silver platter. And that was my very first deal that I ever did. And I'd been stuck in analysis paralysis for months and months and months until he finally shook me by the neck and said, "Listen, if you do this, I will, make sure that, you do everything right. It's all your money, but I'll hold your hand through the whole thing." So I did the deal and it ended up being a great deal, not just financially, but huge shift in my mindset to be able to actually get in and start doing deals in real estate. The second deal that he brings me, there was a squatter in a property and he wholesaled it to me. I took it on. It was going to be my second fix and flip. And I bought it knowing that there was a squatter in
the property.
Yeah. So I couldn't get into the property, but he sold me the deal at such a discounted rate that even if everything was basically destroyed, if I was planning on doing a total renovation on the interior, and from the outside, the property actually looked really good.
Nice.
And it was at enough of a discount where it still would have made sense if you had to go in there and redo literally every room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, literally everything. So I bought the property through a long process of trying to get the squatter out, finally get the squatter out. That was a long, painful process in itself. Get into the property, and it turns out that there is a 15-foot long crack in the living room where the ceiling was literally ripping off of the wall.
Jeez.
Because it turns out that there was not just an average sinkhole underneath the property, but effectively there was a 5-foot cave underneath this freaking house. That it was crazy. It really showed no signs on the exterior, but when you walked in, I mean, I finally...
You couldn't even get an inspection before purchasing because there was a squatter, so that you would have known that. Typically.
No, there was no way to know, without buying that deal like that. I finally get into the property. It was up in Hernando County. I had Hernando County Sheriff's Department get there to finally get the squatter out because he absolutely refused. I had to take him to court, long process. They escort him out, and immediately we see how the house is sinking in. And so they tell me that, "Hey, we got to call someone from the county to come and look at this." And I told them, I'm like, no, please. You don't need to call anyone. I'll just get this figured out on my own. I had no idea what I was doing. And they said, "Yeah, hell no, we're not listening to you. We're calling." The guy from the county shows up, and he's in the house for about 25 seconds and then goes out to the front, puts a pink sticker on the door and says the house is not safe to inhabit. And so they leave, and I walk to the backyard, and I cry.
Yeah, shoot. I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell did I get myself into? And
not to mention, you had to use a lot of resources to get into this deal because of the deal type, right?
Yeah. So at the time, this is remember when I said that, hey, we don't bet the farm on one property?
This is why.
This is why, because I did on one property.
Yeah.
And I used the vast majority of my personal life savings to acquire this house all cash in order to make the deal happen. And then it turns out that, this kind of like black swan event, it would have been a great deal, even if everything needed renovation inside, except for if the house was literally sinking into the earth. And so I went to the backyard, I cried, and then I called Alex Ottewell, who,
was your mentor.
Is my mentor, and he's, the one who found the deal and everything, and again, gifted it to me on a silver platter. I called him, and through a long process, he helped me, talk out some possible options. And at the end of the day, I just told him, I was like, listen, I know that, all of these are probably good options, but I'm so scared shitless. I don't want anything to do with this thing. Yeah. And so Alex literally bought that property back from me for every penny that I had into it.
That's a good mentor.
He took it on, and it took him like over a year to renovate it. They poured, I forget how many, just like pounds of I think it's concrete or whatever to backfill that sinkhole, to remediate that sinkhole. And he took on, it was a large loss on his part, but he literally came in there and saved me out from that thing. So again, it was just such a pivotal moment in my life. Like, I went to bed, by the time that I discovered this, was a disaster, to the time that I actually realized that I'd be able to get out from under it was still, a couple weeks. And so every night, I mean, I couldn't sleep. I went to bed every night thinking that I was just the absolute worst person in the world.
That was your second deal. You had just quit your full-time job.
Yeah.
So at that point, there's already a certain level of stress. You used a lot of personal savings and cash on hand, which again isn't advisable when you just quit your full-time job and you the future's unknown, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you had a great mentor, which is, I think that's crucial. And I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I took away from that story is that's why it's so crucial to have somebody that you can go to ask questions so early in the process. A lot of times people have, ego or pride that gets in the way, especially when they find themselves down bad. They almost wait till they get down even worse before they reach out for help. And I think it's important that you were able to, still reach out to him. And he was, again, fantastic and taking on that, that role of wearing the cape to save you there.
And a lot of people, I just want to stress like how abnormal that is now being in the business.
Absolutely.
And even if, you made a bad decision, you got into a bad situation and you had a mentor, like oftentimes they may give you some advices on like things that you can do to mitigate your losses and kind of send you on your way, give you the best of luck. But that's why I always just kind of go above and beyond in showing, gratitude for this individual person because of just the impact that they had on my life and then on my career and everything. It just can't be overstated.
Yeah.
So I always make sure to.
So have a mentor. Don't bet the farm.
Don't bet the farm.
Especially if it's your first couple deals.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what could go wrong.
Yeah. That
deal, you bet the farm. The constant in this situation was that you had the good mentor from the beginning to the end, which I think was crucial. But you did bet the farm, which you probably wouldn't do again.
Definitely not.
Even purchasing a property with a squatter, I'm not sure if you would do that again, because I know you kind of breezed through that in the story. But how many weeks did it take you? Because again, you purchased a property, but you couldn't get inside it for what I think was for a few weeks, at least maybe a couple months.
Months. So I bought the property, and then I tried to offer the guy money. He was a squatter. He was not paying any thing for the property.
Yeah.
To rent it or anything. I offered him money to get out so that we didn't have to go down the route of an eviction.
Yeah.
And he didn't tell me no. He said, hell no. And so
he's like, I live for free. Why would I leave?
Yeah. So I hired an attorney, paid to do the eviction. On the last day before the eviction would have been finalized, he contested the eviction and he claimed that he was actually the real owner of the property. And so then that was like a month and a half into the whole process. And then that delayed it another month and a half. I had to get a court date. had to go down to Hernando County Courthouse.
Jeez.
And, you know, I was standing there with my attorney, and the judge looked at my attorney and basically said, like, you know, what's your evidence? And my attorney said, hey, this warranty deed with my client's name on it is a warranty deed with my client's name on it. And the judge looked to the squatter and says, okay, what evidence do you have that you own this property? And he's like, I got nothing. And it's like, okay, Mr. Faltus, it's going to be you. You have to get out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I was like, I can't believe that I had to.
Even the stress of going through that, paying somebody, and your time of having to show up to the hearing. And
now I'm 4 months behind on this house.
And then you get to get in the house.
Yeah. And then finally see this. But it blew me away that like I had to pay all this money, go through all this process just to prove that. I was like, man, I put my life savings into this house. Look at my bank account. Like, it was here and now it's here. I got nothing except for this piece of paper that says I own this house. This guy has nothing, and he can just say that he owns the house, and now we got to go through a whole
and here like force you to pay more money and time.
All the attorney's fees and court fees and everything. It was it was a good learning lesson. I would not buy a property that I can't get in anymore. And I would definitely, there's a lot more signs to be able to look for that I didn't know before. And just going through that time, I mean, it was one of the darkest times of my life.
Sure. I mean, it just kept getting worse. Again, the unknowns. Right?
Yeah, there's so much unknowns. And, I literally thought like I just thrown my financial life away in this property, didn't know what the outcome was going to be. And it was so important to go through that. Now, because you're never not incurring problems. Like, we incur problems every day in our business. But I just feel like I have so much more mental fortitude to be able to, encounter and overcome any of the other obstacles that are coming our way, because I went through such a dark time. I was like, this still isn't anywhere near as bad as where I was. Not just the situation I was in, but mentally, emotionally, I had such a negative perception of myself. I was really, really down on myself, who I am as a person. And I mean, I had just a mentally negative view of who I was and my capabilities and everything around me. And again, it's another reason, like, I got to give a huge shout out to, my partner, Rosie, who, I live with, my girlfriend. She basically drugged me through that time period against my will to kind of like keep me going. Because I was ready to give up on the whole thing, try to go back to my W-2 and say, listen, I like burned myself right out of the gate. This is 3 months after I literally just quit my job and started this company trying to do real estate.
But that's why I think, fast forwarding till today, right? With all the deals that you've done since then, again, having 5 full-time, employees and all the other exciting stuff that's coming in the future. I mean, that's, what I would assume makes you feel so good, today is, getting through those situations. And again, you probably have had other bumps and bruises that weren't to that extreme. But I think it's important, right? I still think you learned a lot of lessons from it. And, again, that's not something that you would post on your social medias per se. And Alex probably doesn't get, what you would think enough credit for stepping in and really helping you through that. So,
I literally can't give that person enough credit. So, no, and you're right. Like, I didn't post any of that. I didn't post anything. I was abandoned social media entirely because I felt like such a failure and I felt like such a fraud. And I mean, I wouldn't post anything.
You're just being hard on yourself, because those losses stick with you longer than the wins do. Whenever you have a win, you get a little bit of happiness for a split second, but then it's almost like you almost have more motivation than happiness for what you've achieved, because now you're motivated to either replicate that or do something, one up it, so to speak. But the losses, I mean, they just stick with you because you always go back and again, you're so hard on yourself because you're like, I should have saw this coming, I should have done this. But again, it's all hindsight at that point, right?
Yeah, when you're looking back on it, obviously, in knowing how it ended up, and it ended up okay, it's so much easier with hindsight, looking back and being like, yeah, well, it all ended up. But when you're going through it and you have no idea what the outcome is going to be, and you're like, I don't see any way out of this. It's a whole different ball game. But yeah, I think just building that like kind of like mental toughness, that resiliency is so critical for any entrepreneur, because you're going to go through so many challenges, so many late nights, so much stuff that no one's going to see.
Yep.
And then you're only looking at such a small prism through social media, and it looks like everybody else is making mountains of money, and no one's fucking up anything. And over here I'm like destroying my entire life.
Yeah.
And I felt like the only one too.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought I was the only absolute idiot in real estate who wasn't making money.
Yeah.
3 months into like.
Well, the only reason why you felt like that, because again, people don't post their losses, and they don't talk about these extreme situations for whatever reason, right? And I'm not sure I would have talked about it either, because again, it brings you so much pain to think about how you felt in that moment. I mean, I'm sure today you don't necessarily feel pain because you're able to get past it and build from it, but I can imagine in the moment you're like, man, that was brutal.
Oh, I mean, I wish I would have, talked about it on social media and stuff. And now it's one of the reasons why I make a point. Like, you follow me on social media, like I seriously make it a point to talk about, things that do go wrong. Like I post, successes and post wins and the reasons why those wins happen.
Yeah.
So that it can hopefully be helpful to someone to see, hey, what does work? And also equally as important, or maybe even more important, what doesn't work?
Right.
Like, hey, what did I do wrong? Or what did we do that came back and bit us in the ass? Like I talk about that. I try to talk about that, a lot as well, so that people can get a full perspective, because everything that I see on social media, the people that I follow, it's almost all just
look what I've done, look what I can do, look where I'm going.
Everyone,
those things are positive, because I think without people, that's one of the main positives I always take away from social media. Because sometimes people say, hey, you never post your losses, you act like everything's so good. Sometimes people act like it's better than it is, and I think that's fine, because it's still rooted in positive energy. I think, because even if they're portraying something that they're not, they're aiming towards something that they think is where they need to be.
Yeah, I don't fault people for only posting wins. I just know the onus is on us as people who watch it to have the wherewithal to know
you're not alone.
Yeah. And that's the thing. If like you're not in the business, you may not know the reality of how hard that business can be, and how even the people that are posting their wins, I guarantee you, I mean, we're in the same business. Like whether they're posting this or not, like they have struggles, they have shit that's not working out there.
It's not seamless.
No, they've done deals where they've lost money. They've done deals where they had major oversights. I can't tell you how many times I've had so many major oversights, that house being the biggest one, and then countless ones since then, countless decisions I made that ended up being the wrong freaking decision.
Sure.
And I felt like an absolute dummy. And like how critical that is. And so that's, again, like I wish I could go back into that time and like tell myself these things, because I had such a warped perception of myself at that time, and it was really unfair to myself. And so if other people are going through something similar, they're like, man, I see everybody else making money in real estate, and it doesn't seem like I'm able to do that yet. Like, I promise you're not the only one.
You're not alone.
Most people aren't making money. Even the people that are making money are still having an immense amount of challenges and stuff. And so like it is a part of the process. Like I did not realize that I was in the exact position that I was meant to be in. Like I should and needed to go through that period of absolutely just getting my teeth kicked in. That's the best thing that could have happened for me, and I was right where I should have been. Obviously it doesn't feel like that at the time, but like it was so necessary, so important.
Absolutely.
And I'm so glad in retrospect that I went through that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's again, it's still inherently built up your toolbox, and I think you're better for it. So you're busy full time running your own business in real estate, right? That's, again, you're working against two hard things right now: running a small business, which is already tough. We already talked about that, and working in real estate, which is arguably a 24/7 job, because you essentially work for clients and you're always looking for deals, right? And so, what does your work-life balance look like? Is there a balance? Does there need to be balance?
I struggle with this question a lot, to be honest. So, and I go back and forth, and I really don't know what the answer is. For me personally, there's not really too much of a balance. Like, it's easier for me to say, like, I sleep roughly 6 hours a day, and then I pretty much just work the rest. So I don't know how much it adds up to in a week or something, but it's a small business, and I started the small business. So there's literally just no shortage of things that need to get done at all times.
Yeah.
I could work literally 24 hours a day, even with, and if I didn't need to sleep 6 hours, and still feel like I'm not getting enough done, like I'm falling behind.
Yeah.
And that's really common with most people who start a new business. So hiring people, like I've slowly been able to kind of, I even hesitate to use the word scale out from that, because I've been able to put people in positions so that I no longer have to do that role. But now there's another thing that I'm having to do. And I'm just trying to find another person to be able to put into that role. And it feels like as soon as I can get that done, then there's going to be another thing that I'm going to have to do.
There's always something.
Yeah. So that's the thing. There's literally just no shortage of shit that needs to get done. And you're the only person initially that's going to be able to do it. And it's going to do it.
I mean, it's your baby. It's your business, right? And, you know, I know the type of person you are, you're going to lead by example anyways. And, you know, we talked earlier about creating those processes and structures in your company. And that's essentially what you're doing right now by, you know, again, there's something that needs to be done. Let's do it. Let's document it. Let's make this more streamlined next time it needs to be done, which I think is important. But, you know, I think that's the biggest difference, or maybe the misconception when people want to start their own business. They don't realize that they're probably going to be working double the hours that they do at their 9 to 5. The big difference is that when you do something, when you do your own endeavor, there's a lot more purpose behind that. And when there's purpose behind something, it becomes more of who you are in your lifestyle, as opposed to something you're going to go do. You go work, you know, a normal 9 to 5 job. You can enjoy your job. You know, you can enjoy your task at that job. You can enjoy the people that you work with. But at the end of the day, there's typically a limit on the purpose. If you're not like a nurse or in the healthcare, you know, if you know, obviously there's certain jobs, teachers that are rewarding and they're mission driven. But outside of those occupations, a lot of it, you know, it lacks purpose. And I think that's why people burn out and lack desire to get up Monday morning sometimes. But, you know, with your own business, I know you're working Saturdays, Sundays. Even if you go out and have a nice dinner with family, you're going to come back and you're going to get on the computer for a couple hours. And again, I always, I mean, I'm the same way in a lot of respects. And for me, you know, that's how I can always limit my anxiety and my stress, is because for me, if I'm working towards something that needs to be done, I don't stress out or get anxiety about it. If anything, I have more anxiety and stress when I'm sitting at dinner when I'm like, oh, I need to do a billion things.
It's crazy, right? Like we start to, you know, knock ourselves for having the smallest amount of time away from work.
Yeah.
It's crazy how it changes your mindset and everything. And I'm not even saying that it's a good thing. It's a necessary thing.
It's just part of it, I think.
Yeah. If you want to hope to be successful, because you could still work your ever loving ass off and most companies aren't successful.
Right.
So if you want to have a chance at being successful, you have to do that. And there is an immense amount of pride that comes from it and feeling fulfillment. But yeah, you start to, it kind of like changes your perspective. I've been, you know, I'll work literally all week and then go to out to dinner. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, shit, I need to get this done, this done, this done. Like I shouldn't be at this dinner right now. I should be doing something. And this is the first, you know, small amount of time that I've had away from not working.
Yep.
And it's definitely tough. But ultimately it's, I mean, for me, it's worth it. And which is why I'm pursuing the path.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say at the end of the day, it's clearly worth it because, you know, you feel good from it.
And if it wasn't, you wouldn't be doing it.
Wouldn't be doing it. Exactly. And I think a lot of that, I don't know if guilt's the right word, but whatever that feeling is, when you want to be working, when you're doing something that other people think are more leisure or what you should be doing on the weekends or past 7 p.m. at night or whatever the case is. I think it's just rooted in kind of like social norms, right? Because everyone's off on the weekends or everyone's supposed to be off after 7 p.m. on a weekday, whatever the case is. But, you know, obviously I think, you know, as an entrepreneur, you kind of rewrite that norm.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I view it kind of like what we had talked about earlier, where you're foregoing immediate pleasure for future gain.
Yep.
And for a larger future gain. And so, I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said that I truly want to work 7 days a week, every waking moment of the day. Like I do enjoy what I do. And for the vast majority of those working hours, there's nothing I'd rather be doing, but there's plenty of hours that like you're tired, you're fatigued, you're burnt out, but you have to keep doing the necessary things to keep going for what, you know, we hope is going to be that larger outsized gain, you know, in the future. We're foregoing immediate pleasure for that. But yeah, I think having that in like for most people who are going through a W-2 job, it's just a different set of priorities. Like you're prioritizing what you consider to be a work-life balance. You're it's a lower priority to have like the purpose, the meaning, but you're prioritizing like leisure time,
right?
Time spent with friends, time spent with family. And I'm not even saying that it's not like one's good or bad. They're just two different things,
right?
And they kind of need each other. Like literally, if every person was an entrepreneur, we wouldn't have anyone to work within the company, and no company would actually be successful.
Right.
If every single person just wanted to work a W-2 job, clock in at 9, clock out at 5, have every weekend off, then there would be no companies for these people to work at.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So, they kind of need each other. You need a lot more employees than you need entrepreneurs. Going the entrepreneur route is way harder, and therefore less people are going to be inclined to do it, and even less are going to be capable of doing it.
Right.
So I think just naturally it kind of lends itself to be able to work, but they're both necessary, and it's not like one is right and one is wrong.
Right. And I think a lot of people think, again, they think very binary. So they think I either have to work a 9 to 5 or I can go all in on being an entrepreneur.
Look at you. You're the perfect example of that.
Well, I'm hoping to go full-time entrepreneur at some point, but even for people that don't have the gumption or the willpower or even the desire to go full-time entrepreneur, again, they can leverage their 9 to 5 W-2 income and dabble in investments that will get them out of the 9 to 5 sooner. Or it just will again provide them that future benefit by kind of doubling down.
Man, Ben, I commend you all the time for the way that you're doing it. I wish if I could go back in time, I would have done my entrepreneurial journey the way that you're doing it. I think it's better, smarter, and more people should do it that way. I was more impulsive. I had done one real estate deal, one fix and flip, and literally quit my job without having any momentum built up in the industry in which I was trying to pursue. Literally nothing.
Yeah.
And it took me so long to build up any momentum. And it was such a negative period of my life where I tell people all the time, exactly like what you're doing. You have a good, stable, W-2 job that you're really proficient in, that you kick ass in, and then you leverage the income and the time that it allows you to then build up momentum on your entrepreneurial journey that you're wanting to do, so that when you do make that transition, it's like I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to start building a car. You're already like having, you're going 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, and then you're going to hop from that vehicle to another vehicle that's going to go 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. And I'm, we started at the same starting line, and I'm still putting the wheels of the car together. Like it just provides you with so much more momentum.
Yeah, I would agree. It definitely helps with momentum, but it's it's kind of like a risk averse play too, right? Because I'm mitigating some risk that, again, when you go full into entrepreneur mode, you quit your job, you still have real life expenses to take care of, real life obligations that pop up, holidays, family outings, some travel mixed in there. I mean, it's expensive to live life, right?
But that quality that you're talking about right now, that you're currently implementing, risk mitigation, that is the quality of an entrepreneur.
Sure.
I mean, your mindset is that of an entrepreneur. You're already working on that endeavor, and the actions that you're taking are utilizing the characteristics that successful entrepreneurs have, which is risk mitigation. What's the best and fastest way to get from point A to point B? And I think that is doing what you're doing, and you're implementing it really, really well. I love seeing it.
I appreciate it.
So and I just say that to highlight you, to commend you, and to tell other people who may have been in the situation I was in, or that many people often find themselves in, unhappy with their W-2 job, want to start a company in a different industry, do something else, do it the way that Ben is doing it. I think is by far and away the smartest, the best way. Than just pulling the evac cord, jumping into it full time without having any contingency plan and not having any momentum built up. Like that was the biggest thing.
Well, yeah, building momentum and then laying the groundwork, right? Because even when you have a great idea, a lot of people have great ideas. I mean, almost everyone, I would argue, has a great idea.
Yeah, great idea don't mean shit.
Yeah, it's just it's how well can you process that great idea, then execute on it, right? I mean, it's really execution. How well can you execute? How do you execute? What process do you need to put in place? But a lot of that groundwork, again, is less stressful to get done when you have steady income coming in, whatever that income is. It could still be at a lower income threshold. It's just that dollars coming in, every 2 weeks or whatever the case is for how you're compensated. It just helps you lay the groundwork. And with groundwork being laid, it's a lot easier to prove the concept of the business that you're trying to pursue. And then from there, you obviously gain some momentum. So
there's a practical purpose. Practically, it's better to have money coming in, especially when you start a new venture. Emotionally, like you can't understate it. Like I can't communicate to you right now in this room. Like when I go to bed at night, when I was first starting out and I had no money coming in, and I had no idea if I was going to have any money coming in, and like the amount of stress that it puts onto you mentally, like you genuinely cannot appreciate it. And I wouldn't want someone to have to go through that. Like there's a lot of ways that I'm fortunate that I went through that, but just because I'm taking positive things away from that doesn't mean that somebody else shouldn't be able to learn from that and do it a better way, aka the way that you were actively doing it.
Well, another thing too, because we've been talking about real estate and we've also been talking about small business and a little bit of both, but people can leverage their W-2 to get into real estate. Even if real estate's not going to be their business, real estate's going to be their investment, right? That real estate can generate cash flow. It can generate a lump sum. If you're doing a fix and flip, it can generate transactional appreciation, tax benefits. It can generate transactional income if you're doing wholesales. So you can use that income to then go pursue the business of your choice that could fall outside of real estate, right? And then the whole thing isn't really about keeping a W-2. It's just about maintaining some income, whether it's investment income, passive income, or W-2 income, to help stimulate the business that you want to start.
Yeah. And like one of the things that I had is I drastically did not understand the expectations for what it took to be successful. And it takes time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes way more effort than what I thought would be required.
Discipline.
Yeah. And so even when you begin trying to whatever venture that you're going to go into, I promise you, it's going to take more time than what you think. So don't cut off your income to think that you're going to start making income in this new venture, because almost always it's going to take much longer and require much more than what you were thinking. So, if you can still have that money coming in while you continue to build and build and build, then it'll be a much more seamless transition to go from one to the other. And you won't have to have as much stress. Instead of clouding your mind and bogging yourself down with all this additional stress, you'll be able to have more clarity, more time, more mental, just like cognitive freedom to focus on actually building the business, as opposed to spending every night like I was, like just absolutely berating myself for who I was as a human being, which doesn't do anything for the business.
Sure. Well, they always say, it takes longer than you expect, but you're closer than you think.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And I think, again, just keeping that positive mindset, being disciplined. And a lot of people, I think they just don't know what they want to do from a purpose perspective. And I think just spending time on that, even again, before you think about making money, before you think about starting a business or starting an LLC or even getting into investments, some people just don't take the time to sit down and focus on what they think their purpose is. And I think if they could brainstorm that, from there they'd find maybe some hobbies and other things that they're interested in, and then from there you kind of grow the seed.
I mean, find ways to help people, and there's so many different ways to help people, and there's so many different ways to make a good living helping people. And but once you start to, I mean, that's the really cool thing about real estate. Like you can help people in all different types of businesses, but when we're talking about people that are like having massive family issues, massive life problems, and then you're helping provide a solution from that, and you get a call from, like full grown adults or seniors, and they're like crying, thanking you for helping them. Like you have come down and helped to alleviate, this massive burden from their life. There's no check that can equal that.
Sure.
And then being able to provide a living for employees that they can feed their families and stuff. And they tell you, like, thank you, I've never made this much money before. I'm going to get, my son into preschool. I'm going to take my wife on a vacation. I'm going to do this for my family. Again, there's no check that can rival that feeling right there. And just what we do in real estate, like there's a million ways to help people. But the way that I found in real estate, It freaking kicks ass, man. It is awesome.
Well, that's awesome. It's kind of the irony too is kind of interesting, right? Because you start your entrepreneurship journey because you're thinking about what you want to make of your own life,
Mm-hmm.
and then inherently down the road you impact multiple lives, ideally for the positive. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. So before we get out of here, how can people what's the best way to get in contact with you if they want to pick your brain from a mentorship standpoint, if they want to do a deal with you,
Mm-hmm.
if they have some questions about how they could do business or get involved with your business, what's the best way?
So let me preface this by saying, like, I do not claim to be a mentor, a guru. Like, I am, we're working full time in real estate for a little over 2 years. I'm learning stuff every day. I've had so many people help me get to where I'm at, and I love helping people who haven't yet accomplished maybe what we're doing, and still we're like a fly on an elephant. So I love for anyone to reach out to me. If I can help you, I would love to be able to. If I can't, I do not claim to be a guru with all the answers.
But you might know somebody that can
I may know someone that does have answers that can help you out. So please feel free to reach out to me. The best way is probably Instagram. I'm most active on Instagram. It's just my name, Dylan Faltus, DYLAN FALTUS, Dylan Faltus. Connect with me on Instagram or Facebook, but I do a lot more on Instagram. And like I said, I love doing deals with people. I love doing JV. I love wholesaling. I love working with other people, helping other people get started. And so if there's anything that I can help with, I'd love to do so.
That's awesome, man. Hey, once again, I appreciate you coming on. Like I always tell people of your caliber, iron sharpens iron. Super impressed with what you've been able to do thus far. I know you're going to take it to way higher heights than even you think that you're going to take it to. You're just that guy. The sky's the limit, and I'm excited to have a friendship with you. And you motivate me. And whenever we get off this podcast, I'm probably going to jump on the computer and try to get some stuff done. So
I appreciate you having me on, man. I absolutely love watching you and everything that you're doing, and here to support it, and just really excited. So, man, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, man. Let's get back to work.
All right, brother.